Hey, it's ShadowACS again. Today's show is one I discovered by selecting it pretty much at pure random. I was going through a list of anime titles, said, I'll watch this one, and clicked on it. So I had pretty much no expectations going in, or no real background about the show itself. I knew nothing about the story going in, or how big a fan base it has. So this is going to be my pure, unspoiled opinion of the show as I saw it. This is Beyond the Boundary. Going into a show totally blind like this is always kind of adventurous because you have no idea what you're going to get. You could find an undiscovered classic or a total piece of shit. And which one of those is Beyond the Boundary? In my opinion, kind of neither. Sad to say, I thought this one was just kind of mediocre. And don't get me wrong, there are definitely some things I like in it. It has some really nice imagery, and I even got into some of the emotional moments. It just suffers from an annoying sense of humor and a story that's frankly pretty bland. This is yet another show that just uses the generic Bleach formula. It follows a boy in high school, he meets a girl, and there's some secret supernatural world going on involving heroes fighting monsters that only a handful of people know about. And I like this setup, I really do. There's a reason so many of my favorite anime use it. But by God, it has been done to death at this point, so if you're gonna use it, you better have something that really stands out. This anime came out in 2013, and by then this formula was already tired. But perhaps I'm getting ahead of myself, so let's talk about the plot. The show takes place in a version of Japan where the world is secretly filled with monsters called hollows. I mean demons. I mean crimson denizens. I mean yomu. Yeah, they're called yomu in this. Do you even give a shit? They're anime monsters. There's also a secret society of people who fight them called soul reapers. I mean magical girls. I mean spirit world warriors. Our main character is a boy in high school who's secretly a half demon, I mean half yomu, named Akihito. Akihido's yomu powers also happen to make him immortal, which is pretty convenient for him when he runs into a spirit world warrior who goes to the same school who keeps trying to kill him, but slowly comes to the realization that it's just not going to work. Eventually, Akihito manages to convince the girl, whose name is Mirai, to slow down and have a conversation about this, and she reluctantly agrees, and the two begin to form a romance as the truth about the yomu living inside Akihito is slowly revealed. So from that plot, you can pretty easily see why this anime as a whole doesn't really work. It's a fairly weak story with an incredibly recycled premise. Like I said, it's basically just a mediocre knockoff of dozens of anime that have the same story. So, does that mean there's nothing in this show that's worth acknowledging? In my opinion, no. There is some good stuff in it, and I actually almost enjoyed the show for it. The best thing in the show is Mirai, who's just friggin' adorable. And I don't just mean her appearance, she has a really cute personality. I love how she's always nervous, flustered, and panicky, but still determined to get what she needs to done. I also like her backstory. She's led a hard life and has even contemplated giving up, but you can sympathize with her and want to see her pull through. The romance with her and Akihito I actually also really enjoy. Even though they do that thing I've talked about endlessly where they wait until the end of the show to have them get together. Seriously, why is this such a common thing in so many stories? But even so, I like watching the scenes of them together. The two share good chemistry, and their backstories actually give them a reason that makes sense why they would start to like each other. Kind of odd considering the show opens up with her trying to kill him. And I am happy to say that the romantic development between these two does take up a big part of the show's running time. It was really refreshing to watch this show after just having seen Basilisk, which ironically was a show where the romance sucked but everything else was awesome. Kind of the opposite of Beyond the Boundary. Aside from that, the look of the show, as well as the music, I actually also enjoy quite a bit. While it's far from one of the best looking anime I've ever seen, it has a lot of soft, glowing colors, which combined with the soundtrack gives it a very atmospheric feel. And I'll even say it makes the emotional moments carry a lot more weight. And there's also one or two side characters that are kind of enjoyable. Like one of the girls Akihito goes to school with is a spirit world warrior named Mitsuki, who has a real sassy, deadpan personality, and is also played perfectly in the dub version by Monica Rial, who I swear is like a female Vic Mignogna. She has an incredibly distinct voice, and yet she somehow manages to match it perfectly to every role she's cast in.
If you don't work harder, your dream of me confessing my true feelings for you on graduation day will never come true.
And since when did that become my dream?
Oh, did you want to confess to me instead?
That's not what I meant! The whole idea was way off base to begin with!
Well, excuse me.
Aside from those few elements, though, there isn't a whole lot I really liked about Beyond the Boundary. I guess most of the show is inoffensive enough, but there is a lot that just feels kinda half-assed. For instance, there's this girl Mirai used to know from her past who now has a grudge against her. Now they could have made this a really epic rivalry or a tragic villain or done something a whole lot more emotional. But instead, they have an episode where they fight and then they make up. Wait, really? That's it? You pretty much forget this character exists as soon as her episode's over. And then there's things like the setup with the Yomu and the Spirit World Warriors. Again, it's been done to death, but they could have at least tried to explore it a lot more than they did. Like, what's it like growing up as a Spirit World warrior? What are all the different types of Yomu? How do they keep this whole thing a secret? How do people get trained to be Spirit World warriors, and who trains them? There's plenty of great shonen anime that are all about exploring questions like this and getting you invested in the world they create. Beyond the Boundary barely touches any of these questions, and that's a big part of why its world comes off as so half-assed and forgettable. And then there's smaller details like this evil spear staff thing that gets stronger when it absorbs the souls of Yomu. It's supposed to be really dangerous and the villain has some kind of plan involving it, but what is that plan? What kind of adverse effects does this item have on the person using it? It's like they started writing this idea and then dropped it halfway through, but still kept it in the script for some reason. Speaking of which, I don't understand the villain at all. I get that he's involved with this society of Spirit World warriors that doesn't like the family that's looking after Akihito for some reason, but that's as far as I got. I get that he has some kind of bone to pick with Mitsuki's oldest sister, but why that is exactly, I don't know. They fight in the climax, so I guess it's important. But any further explanation about this guy and what his plans were went way the fuck over my head. And honestly, I didn't care. It all just came off like a bunch of details that I as the viewer had no emotional attachment to. Another problem I noticed with the world in this show is that there doesn't seem to be any clearly defined rules. What I mean by that is, they never really establish what either the Yomu or the Spirit World warriors can and can't do. We know Mirai can morph her blood into a sword and use that as a weapon, but for everyone else, it seems like their powers are just whatever the hell the writers feel like. Even in a supernatural show like this, it's important to set clear boundaries for what the characters can and can't do for us to understand what's going on. For instance, if, say, Ed from Full Metal Alchemist suddenly started shooting lasers from his eyeballs, you'd be like, wait, that doesn't make any sense. Because that show clearly established what is and isn't possible within its world. Beyond the Boundary really doesn't. The same thing goes for the Yomu. We really have no understanding of what they are, or more importantly, what they can be. Some of them are just puny little monsters, but then there's others that are giant abstract entities that can create pocket dimensions and seemingly everything in between. It's almost like with Pokemon, where they can just make up any weird monster they want and pass it off by saying, well, that's a Yomu. Okay, what the hell is a Yomu then? Again, in Bleach, we have a clear understanding of what the Hollows are. They're tortured spirits of dead people, and they have a definitive look that we can instantly recognize. When you have an entire species of supernatural monsters just be whatever the fuck you feel like creating at the time, it leaves us with a world that has no memorable identity. Like, if you asked me to describe to someone on the street what the Yomu are, I'd be like, they're monsters, I guess. Not exactly a good pitch for the show. One thing about this show I haven't talked about yet is its main character, Akihito. For the most part, he's not very interesting. Which is a shame because it seems like he'd be a goldmine for drama. Half human, half Yomu, how has this affected his experiences growing up? What has he had to go through? Again, Inuyasha did this great. But Akihito just doesn't have a lot of personality. I do like the parts where they sort of subtly hint that he's been through a lot but has come to terms with what he is, but there isn't as much of this stuff as I'd have liked. On top of that, they completely ruin his character with one of the most awful running jokes I have ever seen. Apparently, Akihito is a giant pervert with a huge fetish for girls with glasses. And he never shuts the fuck up about it. I swear at least 4 or 5 times every episode there's mentions of Akihito having a glasses fetish. Yeah, that totally doesn't make the romance with him and Mirai awkwardly creepy. Honestly, with how bad this running joke is and how often they use it, it's a miracle the romance in this show even works at all. It's just a testament to what a good character Mirai is and the dialogue between them whenever the word glasses isn't being mentioned. And as if that one running joke wasn't creepy enough already, they basically do another version of the same thing with Mitsuki's older brother, who happens to have a little sister complex. Yeah, needless to say, the comedy in this show is abysmal. So yeah, on the whole, I wouldn't really recommend Beyond the Boundary. Which is really a shame because I came so close to liking this anime. I like the romance, I like Mirai, the visuals and the music are great. But both the story and its world are just so generic and weak. And on top of that, the glasses jokes are just a constant annoyance throughout the whole thing. If you're just looking for a pretty good romance and don't really care about the anime that's attached to it, you might come out of Beyond the Boundary saying you enjoyed it. But if you're looking for a more complete product that fully sucks you into the characters and its environment, there's plenty of other anime that do the same thing this show tries to do better. This is ShadowACS, and I'll see you next time.